Okay, so we've got this book here, Doing Good Better,
Yeah.
by William MacAskill, and you sent this over to us, and I think it's safe to say
Yeah.
it's a really, really solid guide to getting the most impact from your charitable actions.
It really is. I mean, it's all about, we all want to do good in the world, but
Yeah.
are we actually doing good better?
Yeah, we're doing it effectively.
Exactly.
And this book kind of lays it all out.
It totally does. And one of the things that I think really stood out to me is this concept of the 100x multiplier,
Yeah, this is the idea that a dollar can do like 100 times
Yeah.
more good for someone in extreme poverty compared to someone in a developed country.
It's why, I mean, it just shows, how much further a dollar can go.
Yeah, and it all boils down to like diminishing returns.
Yeah, the more you have, the less each additional dollar actually impacts your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if you think about if you gave someone who was making $28,000 a year a raise
Yeah.
that doubled their salary
Yeah.
versus someone in like, say, India earning like $200 a year and their income doubles.
Right.
Like the impact on that person in India is going to be astronomical.
It's life-changing. Yeah, it's life-changing.
Totally life-changing. The
Huh.
impact on the person making 28 grand, it's still nice, but
Yeah.
not nearly as significant.
It's a good point. And it really highlights, I think, one of the biggest themes in the book is this idea that,
Yeah.
we have limited resources and we want to make the biggest impact possible.
Yeah. Right. So how do we do that?
Exactly. So he lays out these 5 key questions to ask when you're evaluating any kind of altruistic action.
Okay, so these are like our guiding principles for effective giving.
Yeah, you got it.
All right, let's go through these.
Okay.
Question number 1.
Get me.
How many people benefit and by how much?
This is where those QALYs and WALLYs come in.
Right? Quality adjusted life years and well-being adjusted life years.
Exactly. It's basically a way to quantify the impact of your actions.
So like a treatment that gives someone an extra 10 years of perfect health
Yeah.
would be like 10 QALYs.
Yep. But if those years are filled with health challenges, the QLI value goes down.
Right. And Wally's kind of broaden it out to encompass like overall well-being.
It's a more holistic measure, I think.
Okay, makes sense. All right, question number 2.
Okay, number 2, is this the most effective thing you can do?
So you're really like, forcing yourself to compare different causes and really think critically.
Yeah. Are you making the biggest impact possible with your resources?
I love how he uses this PlayPumps example. Remember those?
Oh, yeah. Those playground merry-go-rounds that were supposed to pump water?
Yeah.
It seemed like such a good idea in theory.
Right. It seems so innovative, like win-win.
Totally, but it turned out they were less effective than just like traditional hand pumps.
Yeah. The kids got tired of pushing them. They broke down.
It was a mess.
It really highlights the importance of evidence-based solutions, not just like feel-good initiatives.
100%. You got to look at the data.
All right. Question number 3.
Okay, number 3, is this area neglected?
So this is about identifying causes that are often overlooked or underfunded.
Exactly. Like global poverty is a great example.
Yeah.
Huge problem, affects millions of people. But compared to something like cancer research, it gets way less funding.
Yeah. So even if 2 causes are like equally important, the neglected one might have more potential for impact.
Totally, because your resources are going to go further.
Okay. Makes sense. Right. On to question number 4.
Okay, this one is what would have happened otherwise?
This is about avoiding redundancy in our efforts.
Yeah, sometimes the good we're trying to do would have happened anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like volunteering to stuff envelopes for a political campaign. Someone else would have done it if you hadn't.
Right, it's not really adding any additional value.
So we need to make sure our actions are actually moving the needle.
Exactly.
Okay, and last but not least, question number 5.
This one brings in uncertainty. What are the chances of success, and how good would success be?
Yeah, and this is where he introduces this concept of expected value.
Expected value is all about weighing potential rewards against the risks.
Okay, so like even if something has a low chance of succeeding, if the potential payoff is huge.
Right, it might still be worth pursuing.
He uses the example of voting, right?
Yeah.
Like your individual vote is unlikely to swing an election,
True.
but the potential benefits of your candidate winning could be enormous.
Exactly. So the expected value of voting is actually pretty high.
So even small actions can have a big impact.
Yeah, it's about thinking long term.
So we've got these 5 questions as our guide, but MacAskill also takes on some common myths about doing good.
Yeah, he tackles those head on.
One big one is the idea that foreign aid is ineffective.
He uses that smallpox eradication example.
Yeah, smallpox used to kill millions of people every year until it was completely eradicated.
And that was largely thanks to foreign aid.
So even if some aid money is wasted, the overall impact can still be incredibly positive.
100%.
He also challenges this idea that we should only focus on overhead costs when choosing a charity.
Right.
Yeah.
People get caught up in that low overhead thing.
Yeah.
But he argues that sometimes a charity with higher overhead might be more effective.
So it's not just about how much money goes directly to beneficiaries.
Right. It's about the overall impact.
He talks about Give Directly, that charity that gives cash directly to the poorest households.
Yeah, and GiveWell has found them to be one of the most effective charities out there.
It's about trusting the experts who are doing the research.
Exactly.
So far, we've covered a lot of the theoretical groundwork, but how do we actually put this into practice?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, let's get into the practical stuff in part 2.
Sounds good.
All right, so we've got this theory down, but let's say I'm ready to actually donate some money.
Yeah.
Where should I start?
Well, MacAskill, he's a big fan of GiveWell.
Okay, yeah, give where.
They're an independent charity evaluator, and they really do some serious research.
So they're not just looking for the charities with the, heart-wrenching story.
They want to see the data.
Yeah, they want to see the impact.
Exactly. They want to know that your money is actually making a difference.
Okay, so GiveWell is kind of like our filter.
Yeah, you could say that.
They help us identify the organizations that are really using that money effectively.
Right, and one of their top recommendations is Give Directly.
Oh, yeah, Give Directly. We talked about them a little bit before.
Yeah, they give cash directly to the poorest households in Kenya and Uganda.
And they let the families decide how to use the money.
Exactly. It's about empowering people.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It is, and GiveWell's research has shown that it's actually a really effective way to improve people's lives.
Wow, okay, so Give Directly is definitely going on my list.
Good choice.
What other organizations does GiveWell recommend?
Another good one is the Deworm the World initiative.
Deworm the World.
Yeah, it's all about eliminating intestinal worms in children.
Okay. I mean, it's not as flashy as some other causes, but
No.
it seems really important.
It is. These worms can cause all sorts of health problems, and treating them is actually really cheap and easy.
No, so it's a high-impact intervention.
Yeah, it ticks a lot of MacAskill's boxes.
Yeah.
It benefits a ton of people. It's super effective.
Yeah.
It's neglected, and the evidence is there.
Yeah, you can really see the results.
Absolutely.
Okay, so donations are great for immediate impact, but MacAskill also talks a lot about career choices.
Oh, yeah. A huge chunk of the book is dedicated to that.
He pushes back against this idea that everyone who wants to make a difference has to work for a nonprofit.
Right. Sometimes earning to give can be even more impactful.
I mean, that was a really mind-blowing idea for me.
I know, right?
But it makes sense. If you can land a high-paying job
Yeah.
and donate a big chunk of your income, you could potentially do a lot more good.
Way more than if you were working for a charity with limited resources.
Totally. So how do we figure out these high-impact careers?
Well, MacAskill kind of lays out 3 main paths.
Okay.
You can work for an effective organization,
Mm-hmm.
you can earn to give, or you can pursue what he calls high-potential long shots.
Okay, break those down for me.
All right, so working for an effective organization.
Yeah, that seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, but it's not just about working for any nonprofit.
Right. It has to be an organization that's actually making a difference.
Exactly. They need to be using data and evidence to guide their decisions.
So GiveWell, for example.
Exactly. GiveWell would be a great place to work.
Okay, cool. What about earning to give?
Earning to give is all about choosing a career path that will allow you to earn a high income so you can donate more.
So what kind of careers are we talking
Well,
about?
he mentions things like software engineering.
Okay. Yeah, software engineers make bank.
They do. He also mentions quantitative trading.
Quantitative trading, that sounds intense.
It's a specialized area of finance
Okay.
that uses complex algorithms to make trading decisions.
So you have to be really good at math.
Pretty much, but it can be incredibly lucrative.
So if you can handle the pressure and the risk,
Yeah.
you could potentially make a ton of money and donate a lot of it. All right, what about those high potential long shots?
So this path is all about entrepreneurship.
Okay, so starting your own business.
Yeah, but not just any business. It has to be a business that addresses a neglected problem.
So it's not just about making money, it's about making a difference.
Exactly. He gives this example of Lincoln Quirk, who founded Wave.
Wave, what's that?
So Wave is a company that makes it easier and cheaper for immigrants to send money back home to their families.
Oh, those remittance services.
Yeah, those can be really expensive.
Yeah, they take a huge cut.
Exactly. And Quirk saw this problem, and he built a business to solve it.
Wow, it's awesome.
It's a great example of using your skills and your entrepreneurial spirit to make a real impact.
Okay, so we've got these 3 paths laid out, but how do we choose the one that's right for us?
That's a good question. MacAskill emphasizes the importance of personal fit.
Personal fit.
Yeah, you need to find a career that you're actually passionate about.
Right. It's not just about crunching the numbers and picking the path with the highest potential impact.
No, it's about finding something that you're good at and that you enjoy.
Because if you're miserable in your job, you're not going to be very effective.
Exactly. You need to find something that you can see yourself doing long term.
Okay, so passion and personal fulfillment are key.
100%. He also talks about building career capital.
Career capital.
Yeah, this is all about acquiring skills and connections and experience.
So you're basically investing in your future impact.
Right. And as you gain experience and build those skills, you can then use that capital to make a bigger difference.
He uses that example of Rob Mather, who founded the Against Malaria Foundation.
Yeah, Mather had a really successful career in business before he transitioned into the nonprofit world.
So that experience was really valuable when he started AMF.
It totally was. It shows that there's no one right way to find a high-impact career.
It's about being strategic and thinking long-term.
Exactly.
Okay, what about this idea of neglectedness?
Ah, yes, neglectedness. This is a big one.
So it's about focusing on areas where there's a greater opportunity to make a difference.
Right, because fewer people are working on those problems.
So it might mean choosing a career path that's less conventional.
Yeah, or venturing into a field that's not as well-funded or popular.
So even if two causes are like equally important, the neglected one might offer a better chance to create change.
It's about finding those areas where you can really move the needle.
Okay, that's really interesting. So what are some examples of neglected causes?
Well, he mentions a few things like global health,
Okay.
particularly neglected tropical diseases. He also talks about criminal justice reform, especially efforts to reduce mass incarceration, and he even brings up international labor mobility.
International labor mobility. What's that?
It's the idea that allowing more people to migrate from poor countries to rich countries would have huge economic and humanitarian benefits.
Okay, that's a pretty controversial topic,
It is, for sure.
but I can see how it could be a high-impact area.
Yeah, if we could find a way to make it work,
Right.
it could really change the world.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I'm sure there's more to unpack.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Let's dive into some of the finer points, and maybe even some of the more controversial aspects of effective altruism in part 3.
Sounds good.
All right, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into effective altruism. And yeah, we've talked about a lot of the practical stuff, but I know there's some like deeper, more nuanced aspects to this whole thing.
Yeah, there are definitely some areas that can get a little bit tricky.
So what are some of those like less straightforward, maybe even controversial things that MacAskill brings up?
Well, one of the things that I found really interesting was this whole idea of cause prioritization.
Cause prioritization.
Yeah, it's not enough to just like pick a cause that you care about.
Right. We need a way to like compare different causes and figure out which ones are going to have the biggest impact.
Exactly. And he uses that classic example of global poverty versus climate change.
Ah, yeah, two huge problems
Massive problem.
that often seem like they're competing for our attention and resources.
And it's tough, right? Because you want to tackle both of them.
Totally.
Yeah.
So how does MacAskill approach this?
Well, he suggests looking at three main factors:
Okay.
scale, tractability, and neglectedness.
Scale, tractability, neglectedness. All right, let's break those down.
Okay, so scale is pretty straightforward. It's just about the size of the problem.
Like how many people are affected and how severely?
Exactly. So climate change, with its potential to impact billions of lives, that definitely scores high on the scale factor.
Yeah, no argument there.
But then there's tractability.
Tractability. So this is about how solvable a problem is.
Right. Are there things we can actually do to make a difference?
And this is where MacAskill argues that global poverty might be more tractable than we think.
He does, and I think it goes back to that 100x multiplier we were talking about.
Yeah, that idea that a dollar can go so much further in a developing country.
Exactly. And also, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit when it comes to addressing poverty.
So like relatively small interventions can have a huge impact.
Yeah, things like bed nets, deworming medication, even just cash transfers.
So even though poverty seems like this massive, overwhelming problem,
Yeah,
there are things we can do right now to make a real difference.
totally. And then we've got neglectedness.
Neglectedness.
Yeah.
So this is about focusing on causes that aren't getting enough attention.
Right. And MacAskill points out that global poverty gets way less funding compared to something like climate change.
Which is kind of surprising when you think about how many people are affected by poverty.
I know it's crazy, but climate change has a much bigger public profile.
Yeah, it's all over the news all the time.
Exactly. So even if you consider climate change to be a more important problem overall,
Yeah.
the fact that poverty is so neglected means that your efforts might have a bigger impact if you focus on that.
So it's about being strategic with your giving.
It's about finding those areas where you can make the most difference.
Okay, that's a really interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
So MacAskill isn't saying we should ignore climate change,
No, not at all.
but he's suggesting that from an effective altruism standpoint, global poverty might be a more strategic place to start.
Exactly, and he actually identifies a bunch of other causes that he thinks are both important and neglected.
Like what?
Well, he talks about factory farming,
Okay.
criminal justice reform, and even the potential risks of artificial intelligence.
AI. That sounds a little sci-fi.
I know, right? But he makes a pretty compelling case for why we should be thinking about this now.
So what's the concern with AI?
Well, he argues that if AI reaches a certain level of intelligence, it could pose an existential threat to humanity.
Wow, that's a pretty serious claim.
It is, but he's not saying it's definitely going to happen.
Right, it's more about like mitigating the risk.
Exactly, and he points out that even if the probability is low, the potential consequences are so huge that it's worth taking seriously.
Okay, so it goes back to that expected value idea.
Yep, even if something is unlikely to happen, if the potential downside is catastrophic, it's worth trying to prevent it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, I know some people criticize effective altruism for being too focused on numbers.
Oh yeah, that's a common one.
Like, it reduces human suffering to just cold, hard data.
I get that it can feel a bit impersonal.
Yeah.
But MacAskill's argument is that emotions can sometimes mislead us.
So it's not about ignoring our emotions.
Yeah, not at all.
But it's about using reason and evidence to guide our actions.
Exactly. We need both.
Okay, I can see another criticism I've heard is that effective altruism is just too demanding.
Yeah, like it sets this impossibly high standard.
Right, like you're supposed to donate all your money and dedicate your entire life to solving these global problems.
It can definitely feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
But MacAskill is really clear that effective altruism is about doing the most good you can within your own capacity.
So it's not about being perfect.
No, it's about doing what you can.
Even small changes can make a difference.
Absolutely. Every little bit helps.
So like donating a small percentage of your income, volunteering a few hours a month.
Yeah, or even just being more mindful of your consumer choices.
It all adds up.
It really does.
This has been such a fascinating conversation.
I've really enjoyed it.
MacAskill has given us so much to think about.
I know it's really changed my perspective on things.
Mine too. And I really encourage everyone listening to check out Doing Good Better for Themselves.
It's a great book.
Yeah, it's a really thought-provoking read, and it can really change the way you approach giving.
I think so too.
So to everyone listening, I challenge you to take action.
Yeah.
Find out one thing you can do today to put these principles into practice.
It could be making a donation, researching a cause, or even just thinking about how you can use your career to make a difference.
Let's all do our part to make the world a better place.
Absolutely.